If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
We are here today with Jason White, who is one of our steering committee members and has also co-hosted a number of episodes already. And Jason's here to tell his story today. So thanks for being with us, Jason.
Absolutely. I'm happy to tell it. I guess. Happy, nervous. It's always great until it's you, and then the spotlight's on you, and you're kind of, Well, I'll start at the beginning.
Day one.
Day one. Born and raised North Delta. Two great parents, stayed together, still together. And we lived a pretty, normal, air quotes, life. We all played sports. So family dinner usually looked like 8 minutes of everyone eating as quickly as they could and then going in different directions to play sports.
Yep.
Which was great because sports teaches you a lot of good things. It teaches you how to win, how to lose. It teaches you what camaraderie does. It teaches you friendship. It brings people together to achieve a goal together in team sports. So that was what we always played. When did alcohol become a part of my life? Probably when I was 16. Same as a lot of kids in my area. Suburban kids, you got nothing to do. What are you going to do? I don't know. Let's go rollerblading at night with a backpack full of beer, right? And, okay, great, right? That was fun. At least we were getting out and having activity, right? And the same thing with weed, marijuana. We'd smoke here and there, parties. Lived a very normal teenage life. Drank and smoked weed, and I never really let it spiral out of control. After I graduated, I was working in a warehouse, working nights. Different kind of people work at night. We were working in a warehouse, order picking. It's just whatever, same thing. If you smoke weed and stuff after you get off shift, but you work from 7 p.m. until 3 a.m. every night. And it was a good job. It was good money, especially for an 18-year-old kid at the time. And it's just a different life. Getting home at 4 or 5 in the morning and going to sleep and sleeping all day and getting up and doing the same thing over again. But again, marijuana is a big part of that life. But I got hurt at work. And that's kind of when things changed for me. So I dislocated my shoulder working in a freezer. My friend carried me out in his arms in a fireman carry because he couldn't find the first aid guy. And with my shoulder out of the socket. It was very painful. It led to a life filled with shoulder injuries after that. But I was off work for a long time. And that's kind of when I started to use marijuana a lot more. And it was just I had my arm was in a sling all the time. And I was I was off work for 6 months and I was just smoking weed all day, every day. I couldn't do anything. So I wasn't allowed to play any sports, right? So we would just drink and party and smoke weed and hang out and drive around and not really do anything, which infuriated my father.
You couldn't maintain your previous routine because all of that involved your shoulder.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can't engage in any kind of routine. So then we fall back to patterns that kill the pain. Yes, the physical pain, but the pain of boredom as well, right?
Yeah.
Because boredom is a kind of pain. It's certainly not as intense as physical pain, but it is a kind of pain.
Yeah. So, drinking wasn't really a problem. We drank when we drank and when we, hung out or partied or it was Saturday or Friday night or whatever. But weed was every day, 3-4 times a day. Weed was life. Everything revolved around that. And I just kind of would go out in the morning and then come home at the end of the day and go to bed or play video games with my brother and then go to bed. And it was hey, what, no one really asked hey, what are you doing with your life or what are you doing today? I was on WCB. It was I was getting paid to be at home because I was recovering. And so I had 2 shoulder surgeries over the course of 18 months.
Wow.
And I was just I worked light duties at work, which was them just trying to be hey, can you peel labels off this or can you do this? Or so it was kind of I spent a lot of time just doing nothing and getting paid to do it. And looking back, that was a really bad thing for my life at that time in your very formative years. And then that kind of went on for till I was 21. And my dad said, will you please just go to school and get a trade? And it's a funny story. I was working on my car. I was trying to fix my car radio, and I like had it all pulled out, and I was playing with the wires and everything like that. And he kind of said, he's like, are you gonna come in for dinner? And I'm like, dinner? He's like, you've been out here for 6 hours playing with the wires in that stereo. And I was just like, it passed by like nothing. Like I didn't care. I was so fascinated by it. So that honestly, based on that alone, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to try and be a Sparky.
Nice.
Right. So told him I wanted to be a Sparky. He was like, oh my God, he's finally doing something with his life. So they had some money set aside. They put me in the program. It was like $5,000 or whatever. And I went into the ELTT program, smoked weed at school.
Yeah.
Not every day, but I started off not doing it. I didn't bring it. But then one guy at school was like, hey, do you want to smoke weed at break time? And I was like, yeah, okay. And so then we started doing that.
You wouldn't be the only ones that have done that.
Right. And that was kind of like my trade life. I started working for Nightingale Electric, which I do now. And like going from like, being a lazy bum and not doing anything with an injured arm to like working construction life and being on a slab. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to be an electrician. I'm going to like put up some lights and like run some wire and like this is going to be a fun day. And I showed up like 5 minutes early on my first day and I rolled in, I opened the door and my boss is like, you're late. And I'm like, what? He's like, you're late. It's 6:55. You need to be ready to go in 5 minutes. Where's your rain gear? And I'm like, my what? And he's like, we're going outside to a slab. Like, where's your rain gear? It's snowing outside. And I was like, what's slab? And he's like, oh. So I spent my first day getting sleeted on sideways on a slab. Everybody's like, oh, those Sparkies or wusses. Like, yeah, I'll wear that a bit when we're like inside putting lights up. But when you're doing a concrete form building, like we're out there for a hot minute on the deck, just like everybody else, putting conduit inside where the concrete is going to be. And like, it's hard work. And like, if it's wet and you're getting rained on or it's super hot out, like it's hard work just like everybody else. Yep. It's not as heavy as the bar guys and it's not as difficult as swinging a hammer all the time, but you're bent over at the waist tying core line down all day. Like, you're out there like any other construction worker. So same thing. I just kind of was like going to work, smoking weed, drinking on the weekend, like just kind of like any other like trade worker for that. So I went on with that for about a couple of years. And I met my wife when I was, she's my wife now, but I met her when I was 21. So like right around that same time when I became a construction worker. She was a few years older than me. And she was kind of running from her life. And she was running from her old life. She grew up in the Bible Belt in Abbotsford. And she left home at about like 25. She's a medical lab technologist. And actually, she left home a little bit before that, but she had a very like controlling parental figure. Yeah. And
I'm relating.
So she's like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm leaving the church. I'm leaving the faith. I'm leaving the Bible Belt. Like, and I met her in a nightclub on New Year's, right? In line, waiting to get inside. And I was like, I'm gonna buy you a drink when I get inside. And she was like looking at me like, who's this young punk? Like, yeah, okay, buddy, whatever. So, we connected that night, and then I gave her a call like a week later, and then we started dating and stuff. So she wasn't sure at first whether how serious she wanted to take this like 21-year-old kid that she was dating, because she was like, well, this might be fun for a bit, and I'm kind of running from my old life, so yeah, well, this will be fine. So we've been dating for like a couple of years, and we'd had like lots of like ups and downs, as many couples do, and my wife is allergic to weed.
Oh, interesting.
So, of course, at first, I'm like, I don't believe this story at all, right? But, like, she will get physically ill. So, like, if she smells it, like, it'll make her throw up. And I was like, okay, like, whatever. But that's what we all thought, yeah, she just doesn't like it. That's what she's telling us. Yeah. Even though we saw her throw up on a number of occasions, we're like, yeah, we're out partying, we're drinking. Like, yeah, it might have been something else. But like one night she put her arms, like in her bare arms on somewhere where somebody was rolling it. And her whole arm broke out in hives. Wow. And we were like, oh, this is real. But like we had to see it to really believe it.
Right.
But you can imagine with somebody who's like weed is a daily lifestyle, right? Dating somebody who is allergic to weed. So like I had pulled back so weed was no longer like a daily lifestyle, but it was like we were hiding it over here on the side and like, no, I haven't smoked today. Or like I was falling asleep in every movie that we were going to watch that night. Like I was wasting the time I was spending with her because I was just like falling asleep or like tired or like trying to hide that I had smoked weed that day or whatever. So there was a lot of that. And when I was probably 20, I think I was 23, you know, we had a blow up and she was like, you got to pick like which one of these things it's going to be. And I was like, thought about it for a bit, which, you know, in retrospect seems silly, but,
well, no, but you're taking time to clarify your values and not just jumping into something because that's what's expected. So it's probably a good thing to take a little bit of time. And
but that's not why I took it.
Received well.
No, that's not why I took the time. Like I took the time because I was just like being a child about it. I was just like, oh, you're gonna put me in an ultimatum? I'm gonna not talk to you for 2 weeks. Like, okay, 5-year-old, like maybe calm down. So, you know, I did stop. Quit almost completely. At this time, I was in a band as well. So I was like one of the lead singers of a band. We were recording an album and like touring around Vancouver anyway, playing shows in here. We play every month and like, I don't know, we were good. Right? Like for Vancouver, we headlined a lot of shows. We played with good bands and stuff like that. We did nights at the Roxy. We played at Red Room. Like, we played Canadian concert night at the Roxy. We were in Vancouver Seeds, but
nice.
You know, there's a lifestyle that comes with that too. And like, I didn't smoke very much weed and stuff like that, but like, you know, there's other drugs in that lifestyle, like coke and ecstasy, and there's a lot more alcohol. And you know, I kind of traded weed. I kind of traded weed the way I used to do it when it was like on the weekends and hanging out and stuff like that, where it wasn't that serious of a problem. It wasn't an everyday thing. I kind of traded that for cocaine and ecstasy and the same kind of thing. And it's way worse than you think it is. Yeah. Right. But you're kind of blind to like the kind of grip it can have on you. So like,
well, you also have situations there where it's like what we call polydrug use, where you're using alcohol together with ecstasy, but alcohol so like normal, or alcohol together with coke or whatever, it's so normal that you don't even think of it as using multiple substances together.
Right.
But they amplify the effects. They make it so much harder on your body. They put your body in so much more distress when you're using them together. But it's so normal to do it that you just don't even notice any of that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like 2 or 3 of the guys in the band like smoke weed all the time, right? And then 2 or 3 of the guys in the band like do coke and ecstasy. All of us drink except for one guy who almost never drank. And you would just start doing everything, right? And like that kind of deepened and got worse as we like went into the studio, recorded an album. I remember talking to my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I remember one night where she was like, how's it going? And I was like, good. Like, what's up? And she's like, I haven't talked to you in like 2 weeks. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we've been dating for a while. Like, we've been dating for years. And I'm like, I just talked to you the other day. And she was like, no, we haven't talked since like Saturday. And she's like, yeah, it's Wednesday. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even know kind of what day it was. I had taken a bunch of time off work to record. And you just kind of get lost in this like life of like day, night, drugs, alcohol, like, and that's kind of like where I was. And, you know, meanwhile, like, she's just kind of looking at me, this like, you know, 24-year-old guy that she started dating when he was 21, and she's trying to abide by the campsite rule, right? The campsite rule being, please leave the park nicer than you found it, or at least as nice as you found it.
Rule.
Right?
In relationships.
Yeah.
I can see it though. I'm laughing, but I could definitely see it.
Yeah. So she's trying to kind of do that, and she's looking at me like, this guy's a mess. Like, I need to get away. I need to go out and live my life. I'm anchored to this guy right now, and but like, I can't, if I leave him, he'll die. And like, I know she felt that kind of like pain, like that kind of like, if I break up with him, his destructive tendencies will lead him to death.
Which is not a healthy dynamic to have in a relationship.
No, certainly not.
It doesn't, that's not going anywhere good. That's like recipe for super toxicity, right?
Right. She was along for the ride with the partying and like stuff like that. Like she was there a lot of the time, but like she knew how to control herself and how to behave, and like she knew when enough was enough and what to do and what not to do and how to take care of herself. And like I did not. I was like three sheets to the wind, going 100 miles an hour in one direction. Like I'm kind of like an on-off switch, right? So I'm either like doing it 100% or not doing it at all. There's no dialing it back. That was kind of like, that didn't exist to me. It was like, we're either doing it or not doing it. So like the idea of like, hey, dial it back a couple notches. I'm like, there's no notches. There's on and off. That is all there is. That was kind of like my life. So
yeah. I've heard that from so many tradespeople, and I wonder if it's related to ADHD or not.
So I'm kind of in the throes of what I would reflectively look back and say a cocaine addiction, even though it wasn't a daily occurrence. And I kept my job the entire time, show up for work almost every day. I was a mess at work some days, drank every night. When I was working at the Georgia Hotel, we drink a 12-pack. I would drink a 12-pack after work every day.
Wow.
We would drink after work, and then I would go to band practice. And then, sometimes depending on what day it was, we get into other trouble. So I was kind of stuck in this, I was in this dark cycle, really, and drinking every day, hammered every day, waking up and then getting my ass to work and then just doing the same thing the next day. So it was like the alcoholism was like pretty severe. And my girlfriend, who at the time, is just like watching me and doesn't know what to do. And like, she's like, how are you doing? I'm like, good. I just would lie to her through my teeth the entire time. And I would have days where like, I didn't drink, I didn't do anything. Those were the days that we hung out together. Where I was like, okay, time to put up the big front. And I was good at it. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, time to lie about everything you've been doing. She was kind of like, she knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to ask because she didn't want to face it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because she was just like, I love this guy, but I hate what he's doing. I can see what he's doing, but I can't leave him like this. I want to leave him, but he'll die. But I love him, so I don't want to leave him. But it got worse and worse, and I drank every day. At some point, I got moved to a different job site. And, then my drinking buddy was gone. Right. And then it was like, oh, then I didn't drink every day. So it wasn't that. And like, I was very much like a social drinker. I wasn't ever doing any drugs by myself. Right. And I count alcohol as drugs. Like anyone who says like alcohol is not a drug, I'm like, you're lying to yourself. It is absolutely a drug. It is the same. Coffee is a drug.
Mood altering substances.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We just have ones that we accept as regular social normities, and we have ones that we don't.
Absolutely.
And we just pick and choose what categories to put those things in. So I look back at that time and I just kind of was like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to drink as much anymore. I'm at this other site now, and I would sometimes go out like drinking with my buddy at Library Square, wherever. But very, very much different. Life kind of cleaned up a little bit. Still in the band, still doing that stuff. But the album was out. We're just doing shows. We're not getting into the same amount of trouble that we were getting into. And we had a tour planned. So the tour plan was just like a couple shows in Alberta, Edmonton, Calgary. We went out there, played a few shows. We were on a bus. So the bus was a little bit of a mess. There's a lot of weed breaks, a lot of alcohol the entire time, a bunch of drug use. Everybody's got pills and, lots of coke going on. And I just wasn't that into it at the time. But it wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh no, I'm not doing any of that. I was just like, whatever. I don't care. We'll just drink and like have a good time. So I was kind of focused on like the shows, and I was excited about the music, and we were touring, and I'd never been anywhere before. And, it was exciting. So we played a couple shows to literally no one. Literally no one. Like two people at the first show and like 10 or 11 at the second show. And then like I lost my voice because I just wasn't taking care of myself. And like we played a few more people, but like not well received, right? And we were in Edmonton, and we were hanging out in the bus after the show, and like we had a bunch of people on the bus, and my wife had come out to Edmonton to visit her cousin who lived there. So she flew there, and she was going to meet up with us in Edmonton, and she was going to come home on the bus. Thinking back, I'm like, that's a horrible plan. Right? But, at the time I was like, yeah, of course. Like I always wanted to please her. Right? So I was always just going like, yeah, like whatever we want. I was never going to be like, no, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. Me either. So she flew out to Edmonton and she met her cousin. Her cousin, very similar story to her, right? Like left home, left the province, left the church, left the faith, and married a different guy and had a daughter and stuff like that. And she had just broken up with that guy that she had been with for a very long time in a not great relationship. And then my wife was going to see her. And I'm like, I should have probably seen the writing on the wall at that moment, being like, oh, this is bad. You should tell her not to go to protect yourself. But she got there and she just kind of went, she seemed different. Her cousin seemed different. And she said, what's different? And she's like, I quit. And she's like, what do you mean you quit? She's like, I quit fighting it. She's like, I went back to church. And she's like, what? Because like they're the two like eldest cousins in their family, and they both like bailed on that whole like idea of religion or church life. They did it, hated it. They're like, we're out, we're done. Yeah. And they had been done and out of it for a long time. And like she just kind of was like, I went back to church. And she was like, she described it as, she was like, it was like she was glowing. It was like she just, her whole demeanor, her whole life, she looked different, she sounded different, she smiled like I hadn't seen her smile in a decade. So my wife said, okay, well, take me there. Take me to that. Take me wherever you're going. I want to go to. That was, they had spent a few days together in that context while I'm traveling on a bus filled with drugs and alcohol, playing shows to nobody, like driving into Edmonton to face this. And I don't know that this is happening. And, we partied one night after, and like they were on the bus, and like things started to get a little bit like rowdy on the bus, and people were starting to do drugs and drink too much and stuff like that. And they were like, oh, we're going to bail. And I was like, oh, I'll come. Like, we'll go back to her house. And they were like, you don't have to, like, it's okay. You can stay here. I'm like, no, of course. People pleaser, trying to be like, okay, no, I'm coming. Right. So we leave the bus, go back and, drink some wine. Crushed, like hammered, and fall asleep early. And my wife, girlfriend at the time, is kind of going, she hadn't prayed in, I don't know, a long time. And she said she got down on her knees and prayed for the first time in a very long time. And she just said, I'm done with this person, with this life. I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, if there's any way I don't have to like leave him dead like he is right now, that would be great. But whatever, like that, her prayer was like, whatever it means, I'm coming back. And I wake up hung over, like so bad. She's like, we're going to church. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll come. Cause like, I don't have an aversion to church at all. Yeah. I grew up going to Catholic church every now and then, went with grandma. We did the holidays at church. You go to Catholic mass, midnight mass and stuff like that. Like, I don't have any aversion to church whatsoever. The church was always like, oh, it's church. Like, so we go to church, and like, I'm like not feeling super hot. And I sit in the church, and, it's pretty big. Gateway Church, they're rather big. And we're sitting in these like nice seats in this nice church, and the worship leader gets up in front, and he kind of goes like, hey, I see a lot of new faces here, and I just want you to know that, like, no matter who you are, what you've done, God loves you. And he starts playing the song, and I kind of look over both shoulders, right? And I go like, is that guy talking like directly to me? Like I'm like looking around being like, are there a bunch of strange faces here? It looked like he was looking right at me. And I was far away. He definitely wasn't looking right at me.
Yeah.
He had lights in his eyes. Like he definitely wasn't. But like in that moment, I'm just kind of like went going, oh. So they played a bunch of songs. The preacher comes out to preach, and the message is, despite your flaws, despite everything you've done, God loves you anyway. Like this is for you. This love that is being offered is for everyone, including you. And like, it's really difficult to explain how I felt in that moment. I've thought about it a lot, and I've thought about how to, and I've talked to a lot of people about it as well, just to be like, how do you explain what the power of God feels like?
Yeah.
Right. And like, you start talking about stuff like that and their eyes glaze over. They don't want to talk about it. Right. It's uncomfortable because of the baggage other people bring into it. So like, forget about everything you know about religion. I knew basically nothing. I was just like a green, fresh canvas at church. But like my whole body was vibrating. Like, you know when it's really cold outside and then you come inside and your whole body like tingles when you start to get warm and you're like, oh, that feels so good. And you like shiver, this warm, wonderful shiver. Yeah. It felt like that times 10. Yeah. And like, I didn't know what to do with that. Yeah. And like, I'm crying like hard. And like, I don't have any reason to be crying hard. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't understand. And I'm also wearing sunglasses inside in a dark room because I'm hung over so horribly so that nobody knows what I'm going through. So like,
except that you're wearing sunglasses inside a dark room so they know something's going on.
Well, probably everyone else did. The people that I was with, which was like my wife and her cousin and another guy, they were like, they can't even see me. There's tears rolling down my cheeks, right? But no one can see it because it's dark. It became overwhelming. Yeah. And like I literally ran out of the room. Yeah. And of course when I get up and I'm running up the aisle and I'm running like just out because I need to be away from whatever that feeling is. And I don't need to get away from it because it's bad. It's not bad. It's good. But like it's I can't handle it anymore. Yeah. I'm going to pass out if I stay here. So I get up and I run out of there and I run to the bathroom and I'm sitting in the stall in the bathroom. And of course, everyone I've just left inside is going like, oh yeah, he's going to throw up. Like, he drank so much last night. I'm sitting in the stall and in that moment, I just kind of go like, I don't know what this is. I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know like if this is God or I don't know anything. I really don't.
It's something and you cannot turn away from it.
I know it's something because I feel it in every single part of my body. I can't turn it off. So I just go, okay, whatever. And like, that was my prayer was the same that I found out later as my wife, like was just kind of this prayer of like, whatever. Like, I don't know what this means. I don't know anything, but like, I can't stop it. And clearly I can't do anything about it. So like, I guess I'm just going to have to say yes. Yeah, I don't have, there was no other options. It was like God came in, kicked the door down, grabbed me out, and he was like, you're coming with me. And I was like no wasn't an option. Yeah. Right? Like it was death or this way. And I'm like, I guess we're going this way. Like, it felt like someone grabbed me by the shirt and ripped me out of a life. Yeah. And we went back after. And like, they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And I come out of the bathroom still wearing sunglasses. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so no one can see, like, my face is red because I've been crying, but everyone's like, his face is red. He's been throwing up. Yeah. Right? So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to explain. We go back and like, and she's like, are you okay? And I take off my sunglasses and she looks at me and she's like, oh, then it's obvious that I've been like bawling or throwing up really hard. Right. And like, she's like, what's the matter? And I was like, I didn't know what to say to her. All I could say was, I think God spoke to me today. And she bursts out into tears so hard and falls down on her knees. And I go, oh, that is not the reaction that I was expecting. Right?
Yeah.
And like she goes, she immediately says, I prayed for this. And I was like, what do you mean? And she tells me a story about how she just said, I'm coming back. But her prayer was that if there's any way I can not leave him behind, can you do something? But if not, I get it.
Yeah.
And here I am getting ripped out of the room by God, or like, and being like, you're going with her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, you're going with her. These are the options, her or death. So like, I can understand now in that context how that moment was completely overwhelming for her. Mm-hmm. We get back on the bus. I don't tell the guys in the band what happened. I don't tell anybody about what happened. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to process it. I have no idea.
Yep. Right.
And like, our tour has been a complete and utter failure. It has cost us thousands of dollars to do this. We've sold no albums. We've sold no t-shirts. We have a van full of merch that we did nothing with. It's been a complete disaster in every way. Right. And I'm sitting on this bus going home, wondering if like this whole experience that I've just had is even real. And I'm going like, okay, let's calm down. Let's get like a few feet away from like God spoke to you, and just be like, let's think about this like logically, right? So like taking the emotion out of it, taking the spirituality out of it, which I had no context for anyway. And I'm just stripping that away and starting to be like, okay, we went this. I was hungover, often if you're hungover, the next day you're like overly emotional, or you start to feel things, or like everything feels different, right? And I'm kind of going like, okay, maybe this was just happenstance. And the bus stops. And we go, oh, okay, like what's the problem? There's a huge accident, Bridal Falls. We're backed up, right? We had been filming a music video while we were on the tour. And we were missing a shot. We wanted to get a shot of both guitarists playing guitar on top of the bus. So my wife goes, why don't you guys get the shot on top of the bus? And we're like, oh yeah, that's great. So like here we are stopped in the middle of like the Trans-Canada Highway. And we go and we have a camera crew on the bus with us as well. And so we get outside and like we put the music on and we start like filming the guys on top of the bus. We're kind of filming like a rotating shot around the bus, right? And people are stopped in their cars. People start to get out of their cars, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of come over and everybody's trying to see what's going on. And like people are getting out of their cars like far away now. And people are starting to walk up and they're like, what's going on? There's a band in this bus. So we stop there and we pull out the guitars, like acoustic, and we pull out the, djembe drum, and we play an acoustic set on top of the bus in the middle of the Trans-Canada Highway. We sell all the merch that we brought with us. We're pulling it out of bins.
Wow.
And people are buying our albums, people are buying our t-shirts, everything like that. And like, I had lost my voice. We're up there singing. It's back.
Wow.
Right? And my wife looks at me when we get back on the bus. She's like, you still think it's happenstance? And like, I hadn't said anything to her about how I felt.
Right.
And I'm just like, that was like a nail back into my brain to be like, hey, all these things in this experience and the stuff that you felt and that power that you had no explanation for that you felt, like that was all real. And you tried to explain it away. And if you here, let me show you again. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
it's confirmation.
It was.
Yeah.
And so like I came home from that being like, I don't know what to do with this. And some of the guys on my hockey team, like, they went to church and stuff like that. So like I came back and was like, hey, I think I'm going to come to church. And they were like, what? Right. And I was like, I think, cause they had seen me like at hockey, like show up drunk to the game or like drink way too much after, like they had seen me and then been like, you're going to what? My perspective of my life. Like I got lucky. Like I'm dodged literally the addiction bullet that would have killed me. I got ripped out of the way. That's how I feel. Like I feel like I feel like I was right in the path of getting hit by this bullet of addiction that was going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I literally got dragged out of the way.
Yeah.
Like right at the, like it grazed me. Don't get me wrong. It affected my life. And like, you know, I carry some of that effect with me still today. But what do I do with that?
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to get, why I took the opportunity to be part of this podcast was because like, you know, when I heard like what it was about, and it was like men in trades that are dealing with addiction, dealing with mental health, dealing with the overdose crisis, like I really wanted to get involved. And I really wanted to get involved because of like, I'm a man in trades who had problems with addiction. I've met lots of men and talked to lots of men in trades who had no one else to talk to, that confided in me as their coworker or as their foreman. And I'm the only person they talk to. And they go back and they tell me years later, like, that talk we had in the lockup that day after work, or when you pulled me back and said, we sat down at the table and you said, hey, I said, what's going on? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're like, what's going on? You don't have to tell me, but like, you're different. I can tell what's going on. Like, just tell me. And the guy bursts out into tears, like right on the table. Yeah. And like that talk that we had that day, like changed his life. Yeah. Because he was able to talk about it. And like, you know, that was the difference. And like that kind of talk, that's what I want people to have on this podcast. If you don't want to talk, or you can't, or you don't know how, or you don't have anybody, that's why I want people to listen to this podcast and be like, hey, you're not alone. Like, there is tons of other people that have stories just like you. There's other people out there struggling and not talking about it and just trying to stiff upper lip it through their life, because that's what they've been told a man does. He never lets the armor down. He never lets the guard down. He always strong. That's all that there is. And if you can't handle it, you're a pussy, and you need to, you know, man up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And like, yeah, that works great for a long time until it doesn't. Yeah. And then when it doesn't, right, you end up hearing somebody who's like OD'd, or somebody that's committed suicide. And like, that's another reason I got involved in this. Like, my father-in-law committed suicide in 2020. And I wish I could explain the devastation that suicide does to a family, like just the inner family, but also the rings that are around it. Yeah. And like, I had grown up, like, you know, I had experienced like some brushes with suicide and stuff like that. Some people that had attempted suicide, some people that had a brother that committed suicide, never a parent, but the trauma, like, I had been around and beside it, but not in any of the rings, right? When Mel committed suicide in 2020, you know, he was an alcoholic. He drank every day, and, you know, drinking made him happy. It made his pain go away. It made him not worry about, you know, the stuff in his life that he hated. He was depressed, right? And like, he had been diagnosed with depression. You think you're fine, and then you take the deepest, darkest dip. But like, one night he drank so much that he killed himself. And like, we found out later that like, there had clearly been other attempts and or practice runs and other notes that we found. And like, you know, that made it harder, because we all knew he was out in the shop drinking. Yeah. Like, we all saw it for what it was. We talked about it. We said like, we didn't do anything about it, because what would we do? We would tell him to stop drinking. You got to quit that. You got to knock that off. Like, I was at his house looking at an electrical project for his barn the week he died. And like, we planned to do the project, and then we did it that week, like a couple days. And like, I got in my car that day and I was like, I should go back and talk to him. I should talk to him about, like, you know, the drinking and everything like that. And like, I wanted to go home. I didn't want to sit there and have an hour-long uncomfortable conversation with my father-in-law, who might tell me to shut the fuck up and get out, right? So,
and maybe he wasn't in a place. We actually, the episode we just released today, the day that we're recording this episode, is called Losing Someone to Overdose. And in that episode, Julie Cochran talks about all the what ifs that we play. And that's a regular part of the grief cycle. But I mean, we don't know what, I mean.
What if it's not fair? And like, I've said this to my wife over and over again. What if's not fair? It's not fair to you. It's not fair to anybody. Yeah. So I don't what if, but instead I say, I wish I would have. I wish I would have got out of the car and talked to him that day. I feel okay wishing that I would have done that, but that might have made absolutely no difference to what happened. And I'm okay with that. Like, but like, you know, the devastation here's a guy who was sad, clinically depressed, right? Drank every day, addicted to alcohol so that he could get through the day, and he committed suicide because he had no one to talk to about it. Yeah. And even if he had someone to talk to, he had a drinking buddy that came over every day, lived on the property. They drank together every day. They talked sometimes, but like he came from an era where people didn't talk about it. Yeah. Right. And like, he was a farmer. He worked 2 jobs. Right. And like, this is where a lot of tradespeople find themselves, like where they work so hard every day. They come home, they go to sleep, they get up at 4 a.m, get on the bus, they go to the job site, and then they don't talk about their pain. Yeah. They don't talk about their trauma. They use substances just to get through.
Push through it all, physical and emotional pain.
And like, you just sometimes people just give up. Yeah. And like, I don't know if Mel would have. Like, would he have not killed himself if he had somebody to talk about it, or if he felt like he wasn't so alone, or, you know, if he felt like there was a hope at the end of the tunnel, or like, I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I want to talk about it. Yeah. Because I don't want anyone to have to go through the stuff that my family and my wife's family have gone through, because we didn't want to address what was we knew it was a problem. We could clearly see it was a problem. Everybody knew it was a problem. It was like the elephant in the room that nobody talked about. Yeah. And like, we didn't want to talk about it. It was uncomfortable. It's still uncomfortable to talk about. But like, every Father's Day, every Christmas, every time his birthday passes, it doesn't go away. That pain of like, he's gone. And he just left. He just pieced, right? Like, I'll always be a little mad that he left, that he just went, I'm out. Yeah. But I'll also always be a little sad that he felt like he had to. And like, those two things temper each other for me. I'll never get that mad because I'll always be a bit sad, and I'll never get that sad because I'll always be a little mad, right? And I don't want anyone to ever have to go through that. I want someone to like just be like, hey, like, it can be better. I promise. I walked the road looking at death, and I got jerked out of the way, and I changed my life. And now I'm here doing this instead. And like, I was a peon worker out in the field, and now I work in the office. Like, I want people to know it can be better. Yeah. Don't give up.
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Special thanks to Nightingale Electrical for standing behind our tradespeople in the drug poisoning crisis. Nightingale Electrical, your first choice for electrical services in Vancouver's Lower Mainland. Visit nightelect.com. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com and click on the link under Enter to win a $200 grocery card. When you fill out the survey, you help us understand what's working and what's not. Each survey for each episode listened to is a separate entry. Information collected is for survey purposes only and is not shared. Help us, help you.